When they called me hideous, Chen Wei cancelled our betrothal in a single night and ran to propose to my stunning stepsister instead. Left with no options, I was forced to marry his cold, supposedly infirm older brother. An unsightly woman matched with a sickly man. Everyone in the capital laughed at us. But then, on my wedding day, when my former fiancé came to serve tea, he couldn't stop staring at me. His older brother smiled slightly and said, "Little brother, show your sister-in-law proper respect." Ever since our families arranged the marriage contract, Chen Wei's union with my stepsister Mai Ling was supposed to be destined. Young Master Chen showered his future bride with gifts, sending 32 wooden chests to our estate. They practically overflowed from Mai Ling's courtyard. Her side of the house bustled with servants running back and forth, all of them grinning with delight. Meanwhile, my courtyard sat empty and abandoned. Not a single maid bothered to sweep my floors. An old servant from my stepmother's quarters made a special trip to see me, her words dripping with false concern. "First miss, you simply couldn't win young Master Chen's heart. Unlike our second miss, who only needed to appear before him once, and he immediately rushed over to propose. 32 chests of betrothal gift. Which noble household would be so generous? I doubt anyone in the entire capital can match it." The old woman's words sounded like congratulations, but they were pure mockery. After all, Chen Wei had originally been the excellent match my mother arranged for me before she died. My mother came from an aristocratic family. She cut all ties with her relatives to marry my father when he was nothing but a struggling scholar. She never complained about our poverty, the plain meals, or the simple clothing. She supported my father, raised me properly, and served her in-laws without a single word of protest. In her spare time, she would embroider by lamplight to bring in extra money. But once my father gained fame and was appointed to a prestigious position in the Imperial Academy, he grew tired of my mother's traditional ways. He brought his childhood sweetheart, Lin Shu, from the countryside into our home. Lin Shu was cunning and manipulative, always playing the pitiful victim to win my father's favor. She quickly became his only love. My mother, raised to be dignified and reserved, could never learn Lin Shu's flirtatious tricks. Naturally, she fell out of favor. Unable to bear watching her husband dote on his concubine while neglecting his legal wife, my mother soon fell ill from suppressed grief and became bedridden. A parent's love means planning for their child's future. On her deathbed, my mother used her last strength to secure mine. She swallowed her pride and asked her lifelong friend, Lady Chen, the matriarch of the Chen family, for help. Lady Chen and my mother had been close since girlhood. Seeing my mother reduced to skin and bones, she couldn't hold back her tears. "You've always been so obedient and proper, never stepping out of line. The only wild thing you ever did was marry that heartless man, and it turned into a disaster." My mother stroked her hand, managing a bitter smile. "Dear sister, my life is ending, but Xia is still young. After I'm gone, this vast estate will become a den of wolves for her." Lady Chen was a shrewd woman. She understood immediately what my mother was asking and promised, "Don't worry. Xia will be my daughter-in-law. No one can take that dignity away from her." But that dignity was never truly mine to keep. Lady Chen, who had been capable and hard-working her entire life, passed away 5 years later, following my mother into death, worn out from exhaustion. Fortunately, Uncle Chen remembered Lady Chen's final wish and refused to cancel my engagement to Chen Wei. However, Chen Wei refused to comply. After my mother's death, my father officially made Lin Shu his legal wife. Her daughter, Mai Ling, naturally became the legitimate daughter of the family. Lin Shu spared no effort to marry her daughter into a noble family. She raised Mai Ling to be even more beautiful and taught her all the tricks for pleasing men. Whenever there was a banquet at an official's residence, Lin Shu eagerly took Mai Ling along, hoping to promote her precious daughter. Thanks to Lin Shu's scheming over time, Mai Ling's beauty and supposed virtue spread among the young nobles of the capital. As for me, confined to the inner courtyard and never appearing in public, I was described as ugly and jealous, completely unsuitable as a wife. Young nobles infatuated with Mai Ling flocked to her constantly. However, some came from families too rigid about status, their elders refusing to allow a woman raised by a country girl to marry in. Others held positions too low for Lin Shu's ambitions. After much deliberation, the only suitable candidate was Chen Wei, who was already promised to me. Uncle Chen was a high-ranking minister, busy with state affairs all day with no time to manage his two sons. Chen Wei, the younger son, had been raised in his grandmother's courtyard, spoiled to the point of being lawless. After Lady Chen's death, with no one to discipline him, he became even more unruly. Upon hearing rumors that I was extremely ugly, he cancelled our engagement overnight. On the day he came to annul it, he accidentally met my stepsister at our estate. Enchanted by her beauty, he immediately decided to propose to her instead. When Uncle Chen returned from court and learned of this, he grabbed a teacup and smashed it over Chen Wei's head, drawing blood. Lusting after your fiancé's younger sister, what's the difference between you and a beast? Chen Wei angrily covered his wound, complaining, what kind of wife is she to me? I'm unmarried, she's unwed. We only have a piece of paper as a contract. Seeing his son unrepentant, Uncle Chen was about to punish him more severely. But his own mother couldn't bear to see her grandson suffer and defended him vigorously. Wei is right. If you insist on forcing him to marry the first miss and he does something desperate, this old body won't go on living either. Uncle Chen couldn't resist his mother's tears and threats, so he had to agree. Overjoyed, Chen Wei sent all 32 chests of betrothal gifts that Lady Chen had originally prepared for me to my Ling's residence instead. Lost in these thoughts, I replied calmly to the servant, my sister is exceptionally beautiful. She deserves young Master Chen's devotion. Such blessings, I can only admire. The old servant, disappointed that she didn't see me look jealous or distressed, turned to leave angrily. Suddenly, a servant from the front courtyard came running, shouting, First Miss. First Miss. The eldest young master of the Chen family has come to present betrothal gift. The departing servant froze, her eyes wide with shock. What did you say? The messenger caught his breath and respectfully presented the gift list with both hands. Just now, Lord Chen and his eldest son came to visit in person. They said the marriage contract between the Chen family and First Miss cannot be cancelled. Since young Master Chen refuses to marry her, the eldest young master will marry her instead. The servant couldn't believe it, gritting her teeth. How many chests of betrothal gifts are there? She seemed certain mine would be worth less than my Ling's, hoping to save face. 60 chests. 60 chests. Almost double what my Ling received. Now it was the old servant's turn to be deflated. Still unwilling to give up, she said, how is that possible? Does the eldest young master really favor First Miss? The messenger stepped aside and told me, young Master Chen asked me to tell First Miss that he has been weak since childhood and fears he cannot fulfill all his duties as a husband. Therefore, he specially prepared extra betrothal gifts so as not to disappoint First Miss. If First Miss still minds his health and wishes to marry someone else, he will not force her. He will prepare generous gifts and send you off properly as the honored Lady Chen. He had given me both dignity and respect. The old servant had no more barbs to throw, her face turning sour as if she'd swallowed something rotten. Miss, Lord Chen and young Master Chen are waiting in the front hall for your answer. Young Master Chen, Chen Hao, had been raised by Lady Chen herself. If it weren't for his poor health, I would have married him originally. After all these twists and turns, we ended up together anyway. A woman's fate is always beyond her control in this life. The most important thing is to marry well. One can only hope for a considerate husband and promising children. That would be the greatest happiness. Judging by how the Chen family stood up for me today, I thought my mother's gamble had paid off. If I refused, given my father's bias toward Lin Shu and her cruelty, I would never have a chance to rise. I might be randomly married off to some nobody, wasting away the rest of my life. With that thought, I went to change my clothes, preparing to meet Chen Hao. When I entered the main hall, I heard Lin Shu's endless chatter. She was trying to persuade Uncle Chen, Lord Chen, Xia is clumsy and stubborn, refusing discipline. How can she be the matriarch of the Chen family? Uncle Chen sipped his tea slowly, ignoring Lin Shu's instigation. Realizing Uncle Chen was deliberately snubbing her, Lin Shu felt humiliated. She winked at my father. In household matters, My father always obeyed Lin Shu. He echoed, "My daughter is indeed unfit for such responsibility. Lord Chen, perhaps you should choose someone else." I interrupted him. "Father, I am willing to marry young Master Chen as his wife." Standing quietly behind the screen, feeling everyone's intense gazes, I said firmly, "The marriage between the Chen and our families was the final wish of my mother and Lady Chen. If I marry into the Chen family, they will surely be happy in the afterlife." Lin Shu, who had been pleased about her daughter marrying into nobility just moments ago, now clenched her handkerchief tightly, her knuckles turning white with anger. Both marrying into the Chen family, yet my Ling only received 32 chests while I received 60. Moreover, Lord Chen and his eldest son had come in person. Wasn't this clearly telling the world that the Chen family valued their eldest daughter-in-law more? Lin Shu cared most about appearances. This was undoubtedly stepping on her dignity and grinding it into the dirt. Though Lin Shu and my father tried to create trouble, fortunately, my mother had obtained a marriage contract as proof. Both emotionally and legally, they couldn't break it privately. 2 months later, on the chosen auspicious date, my stepsister and I married into the Chen family on the same day. On the wedding night, when I removed the silk fan covering my face, even the cold and indifferent Chen Hao was stunned for a moment. "The rumors about you, my lady, are all false." Yes, in truth, I was not ugly. Those rumors were all made up by Lin Shu. And Chen Hao's appearance also surprised me. Exquisitely handsome, breathtakingly beautiful. Having such an incredibly handsome husband, one who was also rumored to be cold and unfeeling, I couldn't help but feel the urge to tease him. That night, Chen Hao had no intention of touching me. He only tucked me in gently and urged me to sleep early, reminding me that as a new bride, I would have to wake early the next day to serve tea to old Lady Chen. But with such beauty lying beside me, the crisp, cool fragrance wafting from his robe made my heart feel as if it were being scratched by a cat's claws. I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep no matter how hard I tried. Why is my lady tossing and turning? Sensing my restlessness, Chen Hao put his arm around my waist, pulling me into his embrace, comforting me as if soothing a child. In my eyes, this was nothing short of deliberate flirtation. I hesitated for a moment, then stammered, "Husband, why don't we try?" He smiled softly. "Try what?" That look clearly showed he knew what I meant and was just pretending not to. I pressed a light kiss to his lips as a response. Desire gradually stirred in his eyes, his voice growing deeper. "I hope my lady won't regret this." Regret? Sharing the night with such beauty? How could I ever regret it? An hour later, I lay perspiring lightly on his chest, gasping for breath, and whispered weakly, "The rumors about you, husband, are not true either." Who on earth had spread such nonsense about the eldest young master of the Chen family being weak, indifferent, and unable to be a proper husband? "My lady, shall we go again?" Chen Hao played with a lock of my loose hair, his tone playful. After that intense session, my whole body felt like it was falling apart. I quickly burrowed under the covers. No, no more. The next day, I endured the soreness and went to serve tea to old Lady Chen on time. Old Lady Chen was Lord Chen's birth mother. Now over 60 years old, she was still in good health. But the old lady seemed to dislike Chen Hao, and by extension, she didn't care much for me either. She kept a stern face the entire time, craning her neck to look toward the door. She must have been waiting for Chen Wei and Mai Ling. Yet the couple was nowhere to be seen. No doubt they had been consumed by passion the previous night. After nearly another half hour, my teacup had been refilled countless times before the two finally arrived. Unhurried and late, Mai Ling looked even more radiant than before. As soon as Chen Wei entered, he first paid his respects to the old lady. Then his gaze fell on me, standing by to serve, and he stared, unable to tear his eyes away. Noticing his daze, Chen Hao smiled faintly and said softly, "Little brother, come greet your sister-in-law properly." Hearing the word sister-in-law, Chen Wei's eyes trembled slightly with confusion, anger, and finally resignation. He could only say respectfully, "May sister-in-law be blessed." I accepted his greeting, then praised him as an elder would. "I've long heard that Wei has an extraordinary presence. Seeing you today, I realize the rumors are true." On the surface, it was a compliment, but in reality, it was veiled sarcasm, chiding him for believing rumors, breaking our engagement so easily, and leaving me in a desperate situation. Clearly, Chen Wei understood my implication. His face turned ashen instantly. "Sister-in-law, please drink the tea." Mai Ling interrupted in time, trying to ease the tension. We were both sisters and sisters-in-law. Since she had offered me tea, I couldn't humiliate her in front of everyone. After drinking the tea, I should have put on the airs of the eldest sister-in-law and instructed her a few words, but the old lady snorted coldly from the side. "The second son's wife seems much sharper than the eldest son's wife. From now on, let her manage the inner household of the Chen family. As for the eldest son's wife, just focus on serving your husband. His health is poor. He needs someone to attend to him at all times." With just a few words, the old lady proved herself a master of stirring up trouble. In noble households, the eldest branch had always been the most respected. Now she wanted to promote the second branch to power, forcing me to hand over the position of matriarch to Mai Ling. Joy was evident on Mai Ling's face as she replied obediently, "Thank you, grandmother." As a new bride, how could I contradict an elder as soon as I entered the household? I could only nod reluctantly, swallowing back the words I had prepared for Mai Ling, feeling wronged. "Sister." After we left the old lady's courtyard, Mai Ling called out to me when we were alone. "Do you know why grandmother dislikes Chen Hao and why she wants you to hand over the matriarch's position to me?" The word sister made me momentarily dazed. My memories of Mai Ling were stuck in our childhood. Back then, she was naturally cute, always following behind me, begging for the sweets I bought. Later, Lin Shu sowed discord between us, and people's hearts changed. Our relationship gradually became distant, like strangers. Now, calling me sister again, over a decade of estrangement lay between us. "I'd be grateful if you'd enlighten me, sister," I said. Her tone rose, full of satisfaction. "Because Chen Hao is not of the Chen family's blood. He's a foundling that mother-in-law picked up. She took pity on him for being alone and raised him as her own. Since he's not a real member of the Chen family, he naturally doesn't deserve to hold power. Poor sister, you've been kept in the dark, not knowing that the man you married is just an adopted son with no real status." No doubt she had learned Chen Hao's background from Chen Wei and had come specifically to gloat. I thought for a moment, then said slowly, "So what if he's an adopted son?" From the first moment I saw Chen Hao, I knew he was my husband, regardless of his status. As for you, sister, being so obsessed with titles makes me wonder, when you married Wei, did you value him as a person or his status as the legitimate son of the Chen family? Mai Ling was eager to defend herself. "Of course I value him as a person." "Is that so?" I smiled playfully. "To steal this marriage from me, you didn't hesitate to gamble with your reputation. The first time you met him, you pretended to slip and fall into the Lotus pond, deliberately creating an encounter with Chen Wei, who jumped in to save you. What puzzles me is you're an excellent swimmer. Why did you suddenly need rescuing that day?" Mai Ling and Lin Shu thought they had hidden the truth perfectly. But the old servants who had served my mother had long secretly told me the whole story. "You're spouting nonsense. Lies will always be exposed. I'm afraid you can hide the truth for a while, but not forever." I turned to leave, only to see Chen Hao and Chen Wei standing in the shadows, having arrived who knew when. They must have heard every word of our conversation. Chen Hao still wore that faint smile. Chen Wei's face, however, grew even darker. He finally turned and left abruptly. Chen Hao seemed to be in a very good mood. When we returned to our room, he took out a thick stack of property deeds from a box. I flipped through them briefly and saw deeds to several famous shops, including a restaurant that was a favorite of high-ranking officials in the capital. The annual profits from these shops alone were probably enough to support several Chen households. "My lady, these are the properties I've accumulated secretly. No one in the family knows about them except father. From now on, they're yours to manage." It turned out that the 60 chests of betrothal gifts Chen Hao had brought when he proposed were not from Lord Chen at all. They were his own. From that day on, I really had no time to meddle in the trivial matters of the Chen family. Instead, I immersed myself in learning how to run a business alongside Chen Hao. When Lord Chen learned that the old lady was deliberately suppressing us, he rarely lost his temper at the dinner table with his mother. What noble family in the capital acts like this? Our dynasty has always respected proper order and hierarchy. If you let the second branch dominate now, you're telling the world that the Chen household is in chaos, full of conflicts. The old lady had been a farmer all her life, unable to read a single character. She only had such a comfortable life now because she had given birth to a promising son. She didn't care about hierarchy or appearances. All she knew was that she couldn't let Chen Hao, an outsider she had picked up, ride above her own grandson. Have you lost your mind? You don't care about your own biological son, but you yell at me for a foundling who was abandoned by his parents. Don't forget, you came out of my womb. You have no right to teach me what to do. The pain of his origins was exposed in public. Chen Hao looked calm, as if he was used to it, but his hand was clenched into a fist behind his back. I placed my hand over his, gesturing that he didn't need to care. Then I stepped in to mediate, saying that I had asked my sister-in-law to help manage affairs because I wanted to focus on taking care of Chen Hao. It wasn't that I was particularly considerate or willing to compromise. The main reason was that Chen Hao had too many properties under his name. Every day I had to read through stacks of account books. I simply had no time to handle household affairs. I had thought the rumors about Chen Hao's poor health were just gossip, but it turned out he had spread them himself. Pretending to be ill really could save a lot of trouble, no need to get involved in household struggles, time to run his business, and the ability to accumulate wealth quietly, avoiding drawing too much attention. So I followed Chen Hao's example, using illness as an excuse to make my life easier. Furthermore, since Chen Hao was not Lord Chen's biological son, if I insisted on defying the old lady and competing with my Ling for the position of matriarch, I would only get myself into trouble. My future days would be miserable. It was better to step back wisely. It might even earn me a little guilt from them. Another spring festival arrived. Lord Chen took Chen Hao and Chen Wei back to their hometown to worship their ancestors. Before their departure, I carefully packed his clothes and belongings, instructing him repeatedly. Although it's spring and the weather has warmed up, you still need to keep warm, especially at night. Be careful not to catch cold. Make sure to cover yourself with a thick quilt. Oh, and this is a new spring robe I made for you. Also, there are signs of unrest in the west. Once the world is in chaos, there may be bandits. You must be careful. Chen Hao stood there in a pale blue robe. The simple color made him look as elegant as the clear wind and bright moon. Yet his eyes fixed on me were filled with intense longing, as if he were tempting me to sink into them. I avoided his burning gaze, trying to play innocent. But suddenly the world spun around me, and I was pinned beneath him. Xia, this trip will take at least 10 days. Is there nothing else you want to do before I leave? His voice was slightly hoarse. Anything else? I paused to think earnestly, then replied, yes, I should pack a few more jars of ointment for father-in-law. Disappointed by my lack of flirtation, he withdrew his hands at once. But the next second, I pulled him back down, pressed a soft kiss to his forehead, and smiled. Just teasing you. After Chen Hao left, I grew even busier. There was a small shop called Pearl Pavilion, which originally sold jewelry and ornaments. But Chen Hao was not good at running a business catering to women, and it was on the verge of closing down. After I took over the shop from him, I poured a great deal of effort into revitalizing it, even hiring a few girls to help manage it. They were all orphans with nowhere else to go. If I hadn't taken them in, they would probably have starved to death. Fortunately, the girls were very ambitious. Not only did they quickly learn to read and keep account books, but they were also skilled at serving customers, often charming noble ladies into spending thousands of silver coins. Recently, a batch of priceless jade had arrived at the shop, and I had to inspect it personally. But as soon as I stepped through the door, I heard a girl's voice ring out sharply, speaking in an arrogant tone. Who does Xia think she is? How dare she compare herself to our young lady? If our young lady hadn't refused to marry Chen Hao back then, she would never have gotten the position of eldest young mistress of the Chen family. One of my new girls, only 13 or 14, had never seen such a scene before. She ran over to me crying. "Madam, this master and servant took the most expensive jade bracelet in the shop without paying. They even said this shop was originally their young lady's, so why should they pay?" Sister Hua argued with them, but that rude maid slapped her hard. Her face is all swollen. I comforted the girl softly until she finally stopped crying. The master and servant in front of me were clearly of extraordinary background. The young lady in particular was stunningly beautiful with fair skin. The silk gown she wore was made of cloud brocade, a fabric extremely popular among royalty these days. Any woman who could afford such cloth must be either a princess or at the very least the descendant of a duke. Besides, Chen Hao and I had always kept a low profile, never publicizing our true identities. Yet they knew we were the owners behind Pearl Pavilion. It seemed they were not lying. The young lady mentioned by the maid was not only noble-born but also had a close relationship with Chen Hao. Wearing a dark veil, I whispered to the girl, telling her to let them take whatever they wanted. No need to argue. The girl looked confused, but she did as she was told. When I returned home, I sent for the nurse who had taken care of Chen Hao since he was a child. I asked her indirectly if Chen Hao knew anyone from the imperial family. The nurse told me that when Chen Hao was 8 years old, Lord Chen had sent him to the Duke of Yang's estate to be a companion to the young Duke, Shen Yunfei. Shen Yunfei had a twin sister named Shen Yunmai. Pearl Pavilion, Shen Yunmai. The shop had been named after her. Why had Chen Hao never mentioned his past with Shen Yunmai? My chest felt as if it were being crushed by a stone, making it hard to breathe. "Eldest young mistress, you may not know this," the nurse continued, "but the mother of the Shen siblings is the third princess, who is deeply favored by the empress. The third princess dotes most on her only daughter, Princess Yunmai. When Princess Yunmai got married, her wedding procession stretched for 10 miles along the street. When I was unmarried, I had lived alone in the back courtyard all year round, so I had never heard of this." "Who did she marry?" I asked. The nurse sighed helplessly. "A stable hand. A man who took care of horses at the Duke's estate. When the third princess and the Duke of Yang found out, they were so angry they almost executed every member of the stable hand's family. But Princess Yunmai threatened to kill herself, and they were utterly helpless against her. A pampered princess married to a stable hand. But..." The nurse hesitated. "But what?" I pressed. "Princess Yunmai only stayed married to that stable hand for a year before she demanded a divorce. I heard she kicked him and his mother out of the princess's estate overnight without an ounce of mercy. The next day, a message came from the old lady's courtyard saying that a distinguished guest had arrived, and she wanted me to go with her to receive them. Usually, when guests came, the old lady would ask my Ling to accompany her. Why had she changed her mind today? Though confused, I tidied myself up neatly and went as I was told. Before I even reached the door, I heard laughter and chatter coming from inside. Suddenly, someone sneered. "Old madam, I've heard rumors that Hao's wife is as ugly as a demon. Is it true?" The usually arrogant old lady lowered her stance uncharacteristically, her tone dripping with flattery. "She's not that ugly. In my opinion, she's just moderately attractive. But she's from a minor official's family. She can't help being petty and vulgar, far beneath your grace and elegance, your highness." So the distinguished guest was Shen Yunmai. The old lady really knew how to curry favor. I was used to such ridicule by now. I steadied my nerves, then walked into the room calmly. "Grandmother, your granddaughter-in-law greets you." Hearing me address myself as her granddaughter-in-law, Shen Yunmai immediately knew who I was. When she got a clear look at my face, her expression shifted dramatically from surprise to jealousy, then to unwillingness. Finally, she asked, feigning ignorance, "You are Xia?" I nodded slightly, my gaze falling on the jade bracelet Shen Yunmai had taken from my shop. It was now lying on the old lady's desk. "I called you here to discuss something," the old lady said, her attitude toward me still haughty. It sounded less like a discussion and more like an order. "This is Princess Yunmai, the only daughter of the third princess and the emperor's own niece. She grew up with Hao. They have always been close. You've been married for over a year and still haven't given birth to an heir. Hao and Princess Yunmai have always been in love. So I, your grandmother, intend to make the decision to unite this pair of lovers." It seemed Shen Yunmai had grown tired of her stable-hand husband and now wanted to rekindle her relationship with Chen Hao. I understood instantly. I curved my lips into a smile and asked, "Grandmother, does this mean you want Princess Yunmai to be my husband's concubine?" Shen Yunmai looked as if she had been subjected to a great insult. She snapped angrily, "My father is the Duke of Yang, and my mother is the Emperor's own sister. Marrying into your Chen family is already a great honor. How dare you suggest I be a concubine?" The old lady rushed to defend her at once. "Princess Yunmai is of noble birth. Of course, she will marry into the Chen family as the legal wife, carried through the main gate in a grand procession. As for you," the old lady's eyes narrowed, "your family is only a minor official's household. You were never worthy of Hao. But our Chen family is not unreasonable. When the time comes, I will let Hao make you a concubine. If you are obedient and serve Hao and the princess well, you may still have a place in the Chen family." I lowered my eyes, but my voice remained calm and unyielding. My family background may be ordinary, but I was married to my husband in a proper ceremony with 3 matchmakers and 6 betrothal gifts, brought into this household in great splendor. I am not some animal that can be bought and sold at will. If grandmother insists on demoting me from wife to concubine to make room for Princess Yunmai, you will inevitably be condemned by others, and the princess will also be subject to public criticism." The old lady was so enraged by my refusal that she clutched her chest, her face turning red with anger. Just then, a servant entered and whispered something in her ear. After listening, the old lady's anger flared even hotter. She picked up a nearby teacup and threw it at me without hesitation. The cup hit my forehead, splitting the skin open and drawing blood. Shen Yunmai was clearly startled. She asked, "What's going on?" The servant explained everything in detail. Second young master was drinking at a restaurant some time ago and became quite close to Hong Xiu, the daughter of the restaurant's owner. Second young mistress has resented this for a long time. While second young master was away, she took a group of servants and beat Hong Xiu until she was covered in injuries. But Hong Xiu is not one to be bullied. She has taken our Chen family to court. This was my Ling's fault. Why was she taking her anger out on me? Sensing my confusion, the servant added, "This servant heard that Hong Xiu looks quite similar to you, eldest young mistress. That's why second young mistress lost her temper so violently." What a scandal. Mockery and triumph flickered in Shen Yunmai's eyes. The old lady gasped for breath, clutching her chest as she glared at me fiercely. "I knew you were a curse, a seductress. Ever since you married into this family, nothing but trouble has followed. And now you've gotten Wei entangled in a lawsuit. When Hao comes back, I'll make him divorce you. You'll never be allowed to stay in the Chen family again." Shen Yunmai handed the old lady a cup of tea, soothing her. "Old madam, don't be angry. Take care of your health. She's just a lowly merchant's daughter. She can't possibly turn the tables on us. I have a plan to cover up this mess." Before revealing her plan, Shen Yunmai gestured for the old lady to chase me out of the room. After that day, the bond between the old lady and Shen Yunmai grew even stronger. Shen Yunmai came to the household almost every 2 days to have meals with her, acting just like another young mistress. When Chen Hao finally returned home, the 2 of them were sitting together drinking tea and chatting, while Mai Ling and I stood silently on either side. Because of Shen Yunmai's presence, the old lady looked at Chen Hao with approval for the first time. She hurried to beckon him over, pretending to fuss over him with concern. His eyes first fell on me, but then he was distracted by a sweet voice calling, "Brother Hao." The sight of Shen Yunmai clearly took him by surprise. She seemed to savor the look of disbelief on his face, breaking into a bright, charming smile. "My dear grandson," the old lady said, beaming, "didn't you always pester us to let you marry Princess Yunmai when you were little? When you were 16, you heard that Princess Yunmai was about to discuss marriage, and you even cried and begged your father to go to the Duke's estate to ask for her hand." Chen Hao did not rush to deny it. I remained silent, a lump forming in my throat. Princess Yunmai made a mistake in her youth by marrying the wrong man, the old lady continued smoothly, but fortunately, she came to her senses in time and is now single again. Grandmother knows you've loved the princess for years, and grandmother also adores her very much. So I want to make the decision to let you two rekindle your relationship. What do you think? Not only Chen Hao, but even Chen Wei and Mai Ling, who were outsiders to this matter, looked shocked. Grandmother, Chen Hao said without the slightest hesitation, giving a clear answer, I already have Xia. The hope in Shen Yunmei's eyes flickered and died instantly, and the smile on her face faded away little by little. The old lady refused to let up. Marrying Xia was your father's idea in the first place, not yours. Now that grandmother is backing you, even your father wouldn't dare oppose you. If you're worried that divorcing her will anger her family, grandmother will take care of that too. I'll make sure they can't utter a single word of complaint. You have no need for worries. Just focus on living a good life with the princess. The atmosphere was as tense as a stretched bowstring. In the dead silence, everyone waited for Chen Hao's response. I only want Xia. His tone was calm, but his gaze was unwavering. Shen Yunmei said not a word, then stormed off in a rage. Chen Hao made no further delay, intending to take me out of the room. Before leaving, he said coldly, grandson will request father's permission to move out with Xia and live separately. We won't trouble you anymore, grandmother. We had taken no more than a few steps when the old lady's voice rang out behind us, filled with frustration and disappointment. What on earth is so good about that woman? If you marry the princess, she's promised to secure high positions and great wealth for you and Wei. The rest of your lives would be filled with prosperity. Chen Hao paid her no heed. Seeing that he remained unmoved, the old lady resorted to her usual tactic, weeping, wailing, and threatening. Even if you don't care about yourself, you should think of your younger brother. If you still refuse to agree today, I'll end my life right here. Then you'll never be able to live happily with her. Not for the rest of your life. Chen Hao came to a halt. Husband. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, unsure of how to break this deadlock. He lifted his eyes, his gaze falling on my unhealed wound. The sight of it seemed to pierce him, cementing his resolve to leave. Just as we were about to step over the threshold, a loud crash echoed behind us, followed by Chen Wei's panicked cry, "Grandmother." The old lady had failed to kill herself, but she was left bedridden. Chen Hao still refused to back down. So I had no choice but to go and apologize to father-in-law. With unrest raging in the west, father-in-law was already swamped with official duties. Now he had to deal with these endless family troubles upon returning home from court, leaving him utterly exhausted. He removed his official hat, saying helplessly, "This is not your fault. It's mine. I knew my own mother was shallow and ignorant, yet I let her run wild however she pleased. That is how things have come to this." Beneath the flickering candlelight, father-in-law stared alone at the portrait of Lady Chen hanging on the wall, his figure shrouded in loneliness. Chen Hao and I chose a new residence and moved out of the Chen household soon after. One evening after we had finished dinner, we suddenly noticed that the Chen estate was ablaze with lights. Curious about what was happening, we were approached by an old servant who came stumbling over, shouting in alarm, "Eldest young master, eldest young mistress. Disaster has struck." Chen Hao steadied the old servant, asking, "What's happened?" The old servant, too breathless to wipe the sweat from his brow, replied anxiously, "Master Shen Yunfei of the Duke of Yang's estate has arrived with a large contingent of guards. He claims that Lord Chen and second young master have abused their power to oppress a common woman, formed factions for personal gain, and been involved in embezzlement. He has already obtained the Emperor's imperial edict to dismiss them from their posts and investigate them." When the old lady heard this news, she immediately stopped breathing and passed away on the spot. "How could this happen?" I demanded. "Eldest young master, eldest young mistress, the household is in complete chaos right now. Second young mistress was so overwhelmed she fainted. Please come back and take charge." When Chen Hao and I rushed to the Chen estate, Shen Yunfei's carriage happened to be parked just ahead of us. Through the thin silk curtain, a low chuckle drifted out, his tone mocking and frivolous. "So this is your wife. She's truly beautiful. No wonder you were unwilling to let her go." He was hidden in the shadows, his features indistinct, like a venomous spider lying in wait. Chen Hao's face darkened with rage. He struggled to contain his fury before speaking. "You framed the Chen family. Why? The low chuckle on the other side gradually turned into unrestrained laughter. Because you made my only sister unhappy. It's as simple as that. Upon hearing this, Chen Hao could no longer contain his overwhelming hatred. He instinctively moved to charge forward but was blocked by Shen Yunfei's men. Your sister is precious to you. Does that mean my family's lives are worth no more than weeds? Shen Yunfei snorted disdainfully. Chen Hao, Yunmai gave you a chance. You were the one who threw it away and broke her heart. So it is you who destroyed your family, not me. For old time's sake, I'll give you 5 days. If you fail to make my sister happy within 5 days, I can't guarantee that Lord Chen won't suddenly lose his resolve in prison. His carriage resumed its journey. As it passed me, it came to a halt once more. A jade fan extended from the window to lift the curtain slightly. Following the fan's handle, a pair of slender, well-defined hands could be faintly seen, their pale skin striking against the shadows. Little lady, he said, if one day you grow tired of following your husband, feel free to come to my estate. The Chen household was on the verge of being searched and confiscated. I dismissed all the servants, arranged for Mai Ling to stay at our new residence, then rushed back and forth with Chen Hao to prepare for the old lady's funeral. Because of the criminal charges against the family, very few guests came to pay their respects. The funeral, which should have been a grand affair, ended up being a simple, somber event. After some rest, the unconscious Mai Ling finally woke up. I personally fed her medicine, but she turned her head away when the spoon reached her lips. Tears pooled in her eyes as she asked, "Has grandmother passed away?" I was still dressed in plain white mourning clothes. She must have guessed the news from that. "Yes," I replied. "What about father-in-law and Wei?" "They're imprisoned, awaiting their sentence." She could no longer hold back her tears and began to weep. I offered her the medicine again, comforting her. "This is not the time for grief. You should think about the child in your womb." Her tears hung suspended as she stared at me in astonishment. "A child? The physician diagnosed you as 2 months pregnant. You must not harm your body before the baby is stable." Hope flickered in her eyes. She quickly sat up and drank all the medicine. After finishing it, she regained a bit of her spirit and said slowly, "Father-in-law's imprisonment must have something to do with Shen Yunmai. I've made inquiries. It was she who instructed grandmother to use father-in-law's name to bribe officials everywhere, blocking Hong Xiu's attempts to seek justice and suppressing the entire incident." The mention of Hong Xiu made the atmosphere turn slightly awkward. Sensing this, she hastened to explain, "Don't misunderstand. The reason I beat Hong Xiu had nothing to do with you. That shameless woman actually had the audacity to flaunt Wei's personal jade pendant everywhere. Her father even went around boasting that Wei had promised to take Hong Xiu as his wife. I couldn't swallow that humiliation. That's why I beat them." I listened silently, then fetched a plate of preserved fruit and offered it to her. "Apricot preserves. Would you like to try some?" If I remembered correctly, these had been Mai Ling's favorite snack when she was a child. She stared at the preserves, her expression somewhat unnatural. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Don't you hate me? For everything that happened before?" "I used to hate you. Now I don't." When it came down to it, the person I truly hated was neither her nor Lin Shu. It was my own father. It was he who had been ungrateful, who had favored his concubine over his wife, who had stood idly by while I suffered. Everything had started because of him, and I would never forgive him, not in this lifetime. I lowered my eyes, temporarily suppressing that hatred, and said slowly, "Besides, who has the time to dwell on hate right now? With everything that's happened to the family, we're all in the same boat. The most important thing is to find a way to save father-in-law and Chen Wei." She looked at me, her eyes sharp with understanding. "You seem so calm. Do you have a plan?" "I do have a plan. I just don't know if he will be willing to help." The 5-day deadline given by Shen Yunfei had arrived. The court was in an uproar that day. More than half of the grain transported to the Western Front was moldy and mixed with gravel, passing off inferior goods as quality provisions. Moreover, our dynasty had been plagued by disasters in recent years. Prolonged drought had left many regions in the West with crops failing completely. The people were already struggling with hunger, making it impossible to raise enough grain locally in time. Worse still, enemy forces were advancing aggressively. If the grain supplies could not be delivered promptly, cities would fall and our nation would be reduced to negotiating peace through giving up territory. Have you made up your mind? Princess Shen Yunmai said, sitting high and mighty in her carriage, her expression arrogant. This princess has no patience to play games with you. If I don't receive your answer soon, I'll tell my brother to persuade uncle to issue an order to execute Lord Chen and Chen Wei immediately. Then there will be 3 lives between you and Chen Hao. I'd like to see how you two can still cling to each other. The scorching sun hung high above. Suddenly, the sound of galloping horse hooves rang out. It was a squadron of armored cavalry riding along the street and shouting loudly, "Grand Minister Wang has returned from his mission. He has secured 40,000 units of grain supplies. The West is saved." The people erupted in cheers. Shen Yunmei's delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly. She muttered to herself, "Grand Minister Wang." Grand Minister Wang was a senior official who had served 2 emperors and remained unshakable in his position. A man of immense power and influence whom even the current emperor treated with deference, let alone the nobles and princes. I smiled brightly. "Princess, I forgot to tell you. My mother's maiden name was Wang. You may rely on the power of your maternal family to cover the sky with one hand. But I too can rely on the power of my maternal family to clear the clouds and let the sun shine through." Half a month later, an imperial edict was issued from the palace, stating that the embezzlement case had been thoroughly investigated and that father-in-law and Chen Wei had been proven innocent. However, the case involving Hong Xiu was indeed true. Father-in-law believed that his own indulgence had led to the corruption of family morals. He planned to resign from his position to atone for his guilt. After much consideration, the emperor demoted him to the west to help the people resolve the drought crisis, allowing him to redeem himself through service. Everything seemed to return to calm. As the sun dipped westward, I sat at the door, waiting for my husband Chen Hao's return from his journey. A figure approached, draped in the afterglow of the setting sun. I squinted to get a clearer look, only to find it was not my husband, but Grand Minister Wang. No, more precisely, it was my maternal grandfather, whom I had never met. Several months earlier, one of my shopkeepers had traveled to the west to procure goods. She had casually mentioned the severe drought there, saying that by the time the court's disaster relief grain reached the common people, it was little more than thin soup. Many people couldn't even get their hands on this meager portion and starved to death. Strangely enough, overnight a large quantity of grain suddenly appeared on the market. But the price was exorbitant, inflated to unaffordable levels. Ordinary people still couldn't afford it. Born into poverty herself, my shopkeeper couldn't bear to see the streets lined with starving corpses. She asked me if there was anything I could do to save them. Unlike our dynasty, which had suffered years of drought, the country of Yu across the river to the west seemed to be blessed with abundant rainfall. If we wanted to save the people, the best way was to buy grain from you. However, our ancestors had once been enemies with you. It was already fortunate that the 2 countries had not resorted to war. How could they possibly engage in trade and mutual assistance? But the enemy's attack changed everything. If the enemy annexed our western territories, their strengthened military might would likely shift their next target to you. It was a case of mutual dependence. Only a balance of power between the 3 sides could create mutual restraint. Persuading the king of Yu to lend us grain would not be easy. Though in the eyes of others I was merely a woman, my words carried little weight. It was already difficult for me to step beyond the confines of the household, let alone meddle in political affairs. Helpless, I had no choice but to write a letter to the Grand Minister's residence, requesting my grandfather's assistance. As luck would have it, grandfather had also been planning a mission to Yu. He rushed to the palace that night to present his proposal to the emperor, who gave his approval. Before his departure, I asked Chen how to accompany him, bringing along a collection of fine jade. I had previously learned that the king of Yu was extremely fond of jade. So I had carefully selected pieces to increase the chances of success. Chen Hao wore out 3 horses traveling day and night to enter Yu's territory. As expected, the king, acutely aware of the crisis, quickly agreed to lend us the grain, rescuing our soldiers who had been besieged due to a shortage of provisions. After returning to the court, grandfather secretly received another imperial edict from the emperor, ordering him to thoroughly investigate the grain embezzlement case. Though my grandfather and I had never met, we had maintained correspondence through letters. When he revealed that the emperor also suspected there was a deeper plot behind the case, I sent him all the evidence I had gathered. I had privately investigated the large quantity of grain that had suddenly appeared on the Western market. Its amount exactly matched the missing military grain. The mastermind behind the high-priced grain sales had close ties to a former subordinate of Shen Yunfei. Chillingly, the enormous amount of silver obtained from these sales did not enter the duke's accounts. Instead, it flowed into the pockets of many high-ranking officials. Trafficking in grain, bribing officials, forming factions for personal gain, Shen Yunfei was the one who truly deserved punishment. He must have known the matter was too serious to cover up completely, so he made father-in-law the scapegoat. This scheme not only allowed him to manipulate Chen Hao but also divert blame elsewhere. It was truly a brilliant plan. Fortunately, I was not without support. Thanks to my grandfather's willingness to help despite past grievances, we had a chance to fight back. I quickly stood up to greet him, smiling warmly. I haven't had the time to come pay my respects to you, yet you've come to see me first. Grandfather's temples were streaked with grey hair. The old man who had dominated the political scene for 2 dynasties was as solemn as I had imagined. Only when he looked at me did a hint of warmth soften his eyes. He said, "You have a pair of eyes exactly like your mother's." I smiled. Grandfather, my blood and bones are all gifts from my mother, passed down from generation to generation. How could I not look like her? He looked greatly comforted. Your mother never had a decent husband, but fortunately, she had a promising daughter. You are truly worthy of being a descendant of the Wang family. I asked him again, will the emperor really punish Shen Yunfei? Shen Yunfei had undoubtedly committed more crimes than just this one. But he was a member of the imperial clan after all. As long as the third princess went to the empress and shed a few tears, the matter would likely be swept under the rug with no real consequences. Grandfather's expression turned grave. He will never rise again. This matter is far more than just bribing officials. The general leading the troops this time is General Ning. General Ning holds heavy military power but is loyal and upright, refusing to associate with Shen Yunfei. Shen Yunfei has resented him for a long time, repeatedly trying to seize control of his military power. So you mean Shen Yunfei wanted to trap General Ning so he could install his own man in power? Exactly. Behind General Ning lies not only military power but also imperial authority. Shen Yunfei dared to risk losing national territory to achieve his goal of manipulating the court. This act is undoubtedly a provocation to imperial power. It is the ultimate transgression. Even the crown prince was eliminated for coveting imperial power. Shen Yunfei is merely a princess's son. If His Majesty continues to turn a blind eye, I fear this entire nation will soon bear the surname Shen. Shen Yunfei had been acting recklessly for too long, inevitably growing arrogant. He enjoyed the privileges of his position yet bit the hand that fed him. He truly thought he was his uncle's own son. It was time for him to face consequences. As it was time for him to return home, grandfather instructed me, bring your husband to visit someday. Your grandmother and I are old now, and we feel lonely at times. Don't be like your stubborn mother who refused to reconcile with us until her dying day. I replied playfully, I understand. You must live a long life, grandfather. When I have grandchildren in the future, I'll come to you and grandmother expecting generous gifts. Chen Wei had been imprisoned for some time. He had grown thinner but also more mature. He insisted on accompanying his father to the west to help combat the drought. Father-in-law had been worried about not having someone to help him, so he readily agreed to Chen Wei's request. The whole family finally gathered for a reunion meal. After dinner, Mai Ling offered father-in-law a cup of tea and said calmly, "Father, now that brother and sister-in-law are here, I ask the 3 elders to be my witnesses. I wish to divorce Wei." Chen Wei was so shocked he dropped his teacup. He hurried to say, "What are you saying?" Mai Ling remained unusually calm. In recent days, while I had been busy working with grandfather to save people, She had taken care of household affairs alone. It seemed she had matured a great deal during this crisis. When my mother and I plotted against you, you saved me from drowning, but you also felt indebted to me. You had no choice but to marry me to preserve my reputation. These past few days, I've thought it through. Hong Xiu is a good girl, other than being a bit spoiled. She has no faults. She is well suited to you. Ever since I had exposed Mai Ling's true motives for marrying Chen Wei, that she had only wanted his status as the legitimate son over a year ago, Chen Wei's attitude toward her had changed drastically. He spent his days drinking, never returning home at night. Guilty, Mai Ling had no choice but to turn a blind eye. To her surprise, her tolerance only made Chen Wei more reckless, ultimately leading to the incident with Hong Xiu. Hong Xiu and I are innocent, Chen Wei hastily explained. Once I married you, I intended to live a good life with you. I'm not the kind of person who covets others while already married. When I learned you had married me for status, I admit I was so angry I did foolish things. But later, when you didn't seem to mind and even grew cold toward me, I became more and more resentful. That's why I sought out Hong Xiu. But I never thought about divorcing you. Look, the pouch you embroidered for me when we got engaged, I've been wearing it all this time. The pouch was a token of their engagement, personally made by Mai Ling for Chen Wei. Mai Ling had practiced needlework since childhood, and the small pouch was exquisitely embroidered. Enjoying the drama, I stirred things up. Then how did your personal jade pendant end up with Hong Xiu, and her father said you were going to take her as your wife? I lost the jade pendant after getting drunk. As for taking her as a wife, that's completely absurd. I never said I would marry Hong Xiu. When his gaze turned back to Mai Ling, his initial excitement turned to grievance. I know I was wrong. If you want a divorce because you're tired of me, then I won't force you to stay. I teased, how could she be tired of you? After you and father were imprisoned, she cried secretly every night. And all those items she sent to the prison, didn't she put a lot of thought into preparing them? With the misunderstanding cleared up, Mai Ling and Chen Wei finally reconciled. Poor Hong Xiu, though, had endured a beating for no reason. Perhaps they also felt guilty. They went to apologize to her, gave her a generous sum as compensation, and even helped her find a good husband. Only then did the matter come to an end. When Chen Wei learned he was going to be a father, he was overjoyed, vowing to build a successful career in the West and honor the family name. After father-in-law and Chen Wei left for the West, only the three of us remained at home supporting each other. Mai Ling's pregnancy was still early and her body was still mobile. Now that we were truly a family, Chen Hao and I decided not to continue hiding the fact that we were wealthy. Naturally, we also revealed our pretense of being ill. So besides managing household affairs, Mai Ling would help me make clothes in her free time. I had opened a new clothing shop. Noble ladies favored Mai Ling's embroidery skills and specifically requested clothes made by her. She was kept busy and happy, joking, if I ever leave Chen Wei in the future, I could probably make a living in the capital with my embroidery skills alone. It was not an empty boast. My team of girls had grown larger and larger. Most of them were orphans abandoned at birth, poor girls forced into marriages by their fathers or brothers, or women who had fled to me to escape abuse. After training, they were now able to stand on their own. Even if they never relied on marriage, they could still live well. During this time, a merchant from another region passed through and said coldly, "There are too many poor women in the world. You can help this one, but you can't help the next." I calmly told him, "I'll help as many as I can. Among those I've helped, if even one person passes on this kindness and goes on to help another, then my efforts will not have been in vain." A few days later, after Chen Hao and I finished restocking our goods, we passed through the city gate and encountered the destitute Shen Yunfei and Shen Yunmai. They had been stripped of their titles by the emperor and reduced to commoners, exiled to a barren land. Their parents had also been implicated and driven out of the capital along with them. When Shen Yunmai saw me, she still spat contemptuously and cursed, Did you come here on purpose to laugh at me?" I tilted my chin up. "If I'm not here to laugh at you, could it be that I'm here to bid you farewell? The tricks you used to take me down have now turned into a knife that destroyed you. How does it feel?" She was so enraged that she tried to pounce on me, but Shen Yunfei held her back. Naturally, I wouldn't let her brother off the hook either. Before leaving, I mocked, "Oh, right, young Duke. If you ever get so poor that you can't survive, feel free to come find me. I'll give you a couple of coins to buy a meal." After walking a distance, Chen Hao suddenly glanced back. The two figures were fading into the distance, gradually shrinking into tiny dots. "Do you think I went too far with my words?" I asked. His eyes were cold and indifferent. "Xia, if one day you want to take revenge with your own hands, I will support you without hesitation." My heart skipped a beat. Then I remembered something and said, sounding a bit discontent, "I haven't even settled the score with you about Shen Yunmai. Your Pearl Pavilion, was it named after her?" He answered frankly, "We grew up together. It was inevitable that affection would develop. When we were 16, she loved pearls and jade. So I opened this Pearl Pavilion specially for her. I originally intended to give it to her as a betrothal gift. Later she fell in love with that stable hand, and I let go of that thought. As time went by, I had no time to take care of the shop, so it gradually fell into disuse. Somehow, listening to him talk about those past events that I hadn't been a part of, hearing about the deep affection he had once had for Shen Yunmai, left a sour taste in my mouth, sourer than biting into an unripe plum. But it was all in the past now. There was no need for me to cling to a closed chapter and torment Chen Hao and myself in the present. Basking in the brilliant glow of the setting sun, I asked again, "When did you start liking me?" His gaze grew deep and intense, but his words came out hesitantly. "The first time I saw you, I liked you." "What about you, Xia? When did you start having feelings for me?" I rolled my eyes playfully. "Didn't I tell you a long time ago?" He refused to let it go, pressing further. "No, you didn't. You must have forgotten. Think hard about it." I laughed and leaned against him, finally whispering, "From the moment you stood up for me." The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Our shadows stretched long on the path ahead, walking together into whatever future awaited us. 3 years had passed since that sunset conversation, and the Chen household had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. Father-in-law and Chen Wei returned from the West as heroes. Their efforts in combating the drought and implementing new irrigation systems had saved countless lives. The emperor, impressed by their dedication and innovation, not only restored father-in-law's position but elevated him to an even higher rank. Chen Wei, no longer the spoiled young master of the past, had earned his own merit and was appointed to an important post in the Ministry of Works. Mai Ling gave birth to a healthy son, whom they named Chen Ming. The boy had his mother's gentle eyes and his father's spirited nature. Chen Wei doted on both mother and son, and their home was filled with laughter and warmth. Mai Ling continued to help with my clothing business, her designs becoming so sought after that noble ladies would wait months for a single garment from her hand. As for Lin Shu and my father, karma had finally caught up with them. My father's reputation was ruined when evidence surfaced of his negligence in office, favoring personal connections over duty. He was stripped of his position and forced into early retirement. Lin Shu, without the protection of wealth and status, found herself isolated. The very people she had schemed with abandoned her when she had nothing left to offer. I heard they lived quietly now in a modest house on the outskirts of the capital. I felt neither satisfaction nor pity, only indifference. They were no longer part of my story. My grandfather and grandmother welcomed Chen Hao and me into the Wang family with open arms. Grandmother, a kind woman with silver hair and twinkling eyes, often told me stories of my mother's childhood. Through her words, I came to know the girl my mother had been before life's hardships wore her down. It brought me comfort to know that in the end, my mother's sacrifices had not been in vain. I had found my place in the world, and I carried her memory with honor. The businesses Chen Hao and I ran together flourished beyond our wildest expectations. But more importantly, the network of shops became a refuge for women in need. We employed hundreds of girls and women, teaching them trades, giving them independence, and showing them they could shape their own destinies. Some went on to open their own businesses. Others used their earnings to escape bad marriages or support their families. Each success story filled my heart with pride. As for Chen Hao and me, our love only deepened with time. He never took a concubine, despite the social pressure and the old customs. "Why would I need anyone else?" he would say with that faint smile of his, "when I have everything I want right here?" On a crisp autumn evening, as we sat together in our courtyard watching the leaves fall like golden rain, I placed his hand on my rounded belly. His eyes widened with wonder and joy. "We're going to have a child," he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. I nodded, tears of happiness blurring my vision. "Yes. Our child." He pulled me close, pressing his forehead against mine. "Boy or girl, they will know they are loved. They will know their mother is the strongest, wisest, most beautiful woman in the empire. And they will know that love, real love, is not about status or appearances or family connections. It's about choosing each other, every single day." I smiled through my tears. "You're going to make me cry." "Then cry," he said softly. "Cry with happiness. We've earned it." And I did. In the years that followed, I would often think back to that young girl trapped in a cold, empty courtyard, forgotten and disparaged, promised to a man who threw her away without a second thought. I would think about how close I came to losing everything, my dignity, my future, my chance at happiness. But fate had other plans. Or perhaps it wasn't fate at all. Perhaps it was my mother's love, reaching out from beyond death to guide me. Perhaps it was my own stubborn refusal to accept a life of misery. Perhaps it was Chen Hao's quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. Perhaps it was all of these things woven together like the finest embroidery, each thread essential to the pattern. Whatever the reason, I was grateful. I had started as an unwanted daughter, dismissed as ugly and unmarriageable. I had become a woman of influence, a successful merchant, a beloved wife, and eventually, a mother. But most importantly, I had become myself unapologetically, fully, joyfully myself. And as I sat in my courtyard, surrounded by the people I loved, watching my children play while Chen Hao read beside me, his hand occasionally reaching out to touch mine as if to confirm I was real, I realized something profound. The greatest revenge against those who tried to diminish you is not to destroy them. It's to build a life so beautiful, so full of love and purpose, that their opinions become nothing more than distant echoes, barely audible over the sound of your own happiness. My mother had told me once, in those final days before she left me, a woman's worth is not determined by her husband or her beauty or her family name. It's determined by her character, her resilience, and her capacity to love. I finally understood what she meant. And I hoped, wherever she was, she could see me now and know that her daughter had not just survived, she had thrived. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of love, betrayal, and ultimate triumph. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story of hope and resilience. And don't forget to leave a comment below. We love hearing your thoughts and connecting with our amazing community. What part of the story resonated most with you? Let us know. Until next time, remember, your past does not define your future. You do.